For those that are just tuning in, Mineral Wells is a small town in Texas where I've been working for 5 years as a police officer. It's located somewhere north of interesting and south of scary as shit, where the citizens are strange and the events are stranger, and the past is never past. Please check out the other 5 parts of this tale on my YouTube account. Thank you. And now for the finale. They found me, covered in gore and vomit, right where I had collapsed. The neighbours had gotten tired of the constant blaring sirens and called the police. James was there, along with several other officers. "Jesus Christ, man. It's a bloodbath in here. What happened?" he asked incredulously. "It was too late. I tried to stop it," I whispered as he pulled me up onto my feet. "Who did this?" "It was..." But I couldn't put the words together. What could I say? "Is any of this your blood? Are you hurt?" "No, I'm fine." I'm not fine, I thought. In minutes, the whole team was there, rolling out the yellow tape, photographing everything and collecting evidence. In a small town like Mineral Wells, you wouldn't see everyone in hazmat suits dusting things with fingerprints, setting up lasers that showed trajectory of bullets and such. The investigators do mostly everything, and they do it really well most of the time, although I would have hated to be the guy that had to collect all those body parts. My clothes, shoes and the rest of the gear I was wearing was collected in clear plastic bags. I was photographed from head to toe and blood swabs were taken. Because I was an officer, I was allowed to go home and shower before heading up to the precinct to give my statement. I know that any other civilian would have been arrested on the spot. I arrived at the precinct, showered and clean-shaven. My black satchel over my shoulder. I was taken back to the room where we interviewed criminals, asked to sit and offered a cup of coffee. I politely declined. We have a little camcorder that is set up in the corner that was switched on after the tedious process of deleting some old interviews. I was nervous at that point. Shouldn't I be meeting with a superior to simply give my statement? Instead, I was read my Miranda rights. I decided to decline my right to have an attorney present while I was questioned. I had nothing to hide. Looking back now, I realised that was my first mistake. But considering the almost catatonic emotional state I had been in for some time, logic and reason had deserted me, and the fire inside me. The one inside all of us that urges us to fight at all costs had been all but extinguished. I told my story from beginning to end, the possessions, the experiments, and even what Teresa said, all of it. It had to come out. I showed them the files as proof. I pleaded with my fellow officers to stop drinking the water and to start looking into the strange occurrences in Mineral Wells. I begged them to help me shut down the company bottling and shipping this cursed water across the country. They played along, maybe just to keep me talking, but the looks I got when I explained Mary had mutilated herself, well, let's just say they weren't friendly. I'm sure you can imagine how it went. "Why were you at home that night?" A psychic told me she was in danger. Officer rolls eyes and scoffs. "Sure, buddy, we believe you. Now tell us about these ghosts you saw again." Afterwards, I was placed on temporary leave and taken to a holding cell. The next several weeks were a blur. I was placed under official arrest soon after my interview and held without bond. Can you blame them? It was a gruesome scene. I was covered in blood. It appeared as if I had handled the murder weapon, and hell, she was cut into pieces. For Christ's sake. The medical examiner stated that no human would have been able to survive long enough to do that to themselves without bleeding out. Plus, even if she could have, why would Mary have done this to herself? It made no sense. I learned later that my arrest was never reported, but I wasn't surprised. Can you imagine how local cop arrested for mutilation of retired teacher would have gone down in the local paper? The MWPD would have had to deal with a shitstorm like which they had never experienced before. Controversies like that don't go away very easily, if ever, in small towns like Mineral Wells. Luckily, the grand jury was meeting that month, so I didn't have long to wait. My case was fast-tracked and quickly presented. To no one's surprise, the grand jury returned a true bill. I was indicted for murder under Texas Penal Code 19.02. It can carry up to life in prison. As you can imagine, getting indicted for murder for a crime you didn't commit is a crushing feeling. What's worse is that I knew I had no chance to convince anyone that I was innocent. The MWPD had the files, which didn't really prove anything anyway, but I knew they would never see the light of day again. Even if Stan and Teresa had come forward with some other credible evidence, there was no way they would have been believed. The veil would prevent it. So I sat alone in my cell, mostly crying, often sleeping, receding deeper into the dullness, pretending that this was all a dream. I slept in restless fits, racked by night terrors. At this point, my friends, I have to make a confession. This will be my first of 2 confessions, and is in fact the only thing I am guilty of. I have deceived you. I am no longer a police officer in Texas, as the title of this post suggests, although you may have guessed that already. I apologize for this sincerely. If I told you my current and true situation up front, it's like you wouldn't have listened to my story. I needed you to believe me. One of the foundations of the criminal justice system in this country is that to be found guilty of an offence, you have to have had a rational understanding of what you were doing at the time. After a hearing motioned for by my attorney, the court found that I was in fact not competent to stand trial for what I had done. He presented evidence of erratic behaviour from the time I had arrived in Mineral Wells through to the point of the murder. Some of it was true, some of it wasn't. I'm almost positive my attorney personally thought I was guilty and mentally sound, but he successfully painted the picture of a stressed out cop who had simply snapped. This was perfect for the district attorney's office and the MWPD. There would be no public trial, no one would find out about the psychopathic officer who cut up an innocent woman into pieces. Texas, like other states, provides for a different type of punishment for people who fall into this category. Which brings me to my second confession. I'm currently confined in a secure mental facility, serving a 40-year term of commitment for a crime I didn't commit. I only have access to my phone every couple of days and at certain times, which is why I've had to break up these posts into multiple parts. You may be surprised I have access to it at all, but you shouldn't be. Inmates smuggling cell phones into prison is an enormous problem in today's justice system. The problem is the guards are all in on it. They make a little money by helping the inmate or looking the other way, and of course deny anything if the inmate is caught. It hadn't taken much money to bribe my orderly into letting me use mine on occasion. I had plenty saved, considering I was single, had no social life, and never ate or drank out. I was able to contact Stan through his garage and have him deliver the money for me. He got a small cut too. Human greed, right? I'm also sorry that this may not have ended how you hoped. I think Hollywood movies have conditioned us to believe conflicts always resolve tidily, often to the benefit of the protagonist. If you just believe or strive hard enough or fight long enough, you'll win. They have to, or otherwise people wouldn't continue to watch them. That's a good thing for the most part. There will be no happy ending here. Unfortunately, life isn't always like that. It's dark, gruesome and unfair. More often than we'd like to admit, and we have to live with the scars. There will be no justice for Mary, those children, or any of the victims in Mineral Wells, Texas. There will certainly be no justice for me. I fell victim to something even more sinister than the curse. Hope. The idea that we can change things, that we can make the wrongs right again. I was wrong about the nature of the world, and it cost me everything. One previous commentator described the hopelessness and despair the parents must have felt when they were sent to the Milling Sanitarium after watching their children scream in agony on that operating table. That's the feeling that haunts me now. The meds I'm administered every day at 9 and 3 help some. I'm numb, mostly, and I can sleep. I wouldn't have been able to live with the night terrors. Ugh. Thankfully, the dullness has almost faded away. I see it's time for me to go. I must leave you, dear reader. This time for good. It's time for one of my treatments. Yes, I have those too. Some traditional and some experimental. But they will have to be tales for another day. I've actually got used to the screams here, even though they echo in my dreams. The end.